Palantir's stock price has risen 65% this year after launching their new AI platform. But if I'm right about this stock, this company's value holds the potential for exponential growth like we've seen from the large AI chip makers and AI model creators. But there's a problem. It's pretty clear that most Palantir investors don't understand their actual products and why they are valuable, with some investors just jumping on anything that says AI. So I've applied my experience as a technical architect for Fortune 500 companies to cut through the fog of AI hype and explain what Palantir actually does so we know if this is a good stock to buy now and in the future know when to sell. So let's start by going over what makes Palantir different from other AI companies. Look at the secret weapon Palantir is using behind the scenes to change the way businesses and even nations run, and break down how Palantir's new AI platform is not the core value of the company, but the rocket fuel they are pouring into the company's engine. So starting with that first point, to understand Palantir's value in the market so we can predict where the stock might go next, we need to start with first principles. How does Palantir's AI provide value? Like, who's paying for it and why?
We are sitting on the only thing that actually creates quantifiable transformational value in an enterprise. There's two parts of the market that are creating value people will pay for: chips and ontology.
The AI market has a lot of hype around it right now. Even Peter Thiel, one of Palantir's largest investors, agrees that it's a strange market. But Palantir's CEO, Alex Karp, argues that all the money is going to end up with the big chip makers like NVIDIA and the ontology makers like Palantir. So what is an ontology and why is it the core of Palantir's business? It sounds like some obscure study of insects. Well, this is an ontology, and so is this. An ontology is basically a really well organized set of data. So while we know that there is a deep relationship between AI and data, we are well past the days when just having data is good enough. Now what's important is how effectively companies can use the data and connect it back to the real world. By understanding how Palantir is doing this, we can gain insight into their future growth before it happens. But first, we need to be clear on what data really means, because that's almost become like a buzzword at this point. A lot of times when I hear the word data, I immediately think of a two-dimensional spreadsheet. Like, this is how I organize my stock portfolio because the data here, basically what I track about my portfolio, is pretty simple. I'll share that on Instagram, by the way, if you want to see it in more detail. But companies don't bring in Palantir when things are as simple as a spreadsheet. This is a company that works with the biggest organizations in the world to take all their data and organize it not in 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions, but in as many dimensions as they want. It's kind of hard to visualize, but that's why ontologies are often shown in these web diagrams. In fact, the internet itself could be represented in an ontology. This ontology represents both the information we're tracking about a particular thing, which is like any other kind of data, but it also maps the relationships between those things. So now not only can you track the information that part of your business creates, you can also understand how that information will affect other parts of the business. This creates a digital twin of the organization, where everything that happens in the real world can be represented one-to-one in the digital world. This is a big deal because, one, it's hard to set up, so it gives Palantir a bit of a moat, and because software and, yes, AI can't interact in the physical world. You would need super advanced robots to bridge that gap, and I don't think Tesla is really on that right now. But if you have an exact digital replica of all the physical processes and actions that your organization is taking, well, now you can just point AI at that digital version to make decisions and recommendations, unlocking incredible value for Palantir's customers that will eventually flow back to Palantir. So if we were to map the human brain onto a business, the ontology becomes the memory center. If I touch this, it will burn me. If I want to go to Europe, I need to book a flight, pack a bag, and get to the airport. These patterns of memory dictate 90% of what we do. But like with a business, they don't make choices or take action for us. But once Palantir gets their foot in the door by setting up a company's ontology, they can then apply their secret weapon, a secret weapon that will change the way businesses grow, governments operate, and wars are fought. Palantir makes most of their money by working with highly secretive organizations around the world. From healthcare to manufacturing to the CIA, Palantir works with extremely sensitive data, which is where Palantir's secret weapon comes into play. Palantir has 3 main products: Gotham, the operating system for defense; Foundry, what they call the operating system for enterprises; and Apollo, the operating system for continuous software and AI improvements. business. But all of these kind of center around Foundry, which I think is Palantir's most important product both today and in their AI future. Foundry combines both the ontology, the digital twin of the business, and new capabilities that Palantir builds on top of that, like search, analytics, applications, and security. When you're dealing with customers like these, one of the biggest advantages is Palantir's security clearance and strong ability to lock down data controls. So I did a deep dive into Foundry, and I could make a whole video on just this one product without even touching on AI. But I want to show the two main features here that are important for tech investors. First, how Foundry is beating out every other data analytics product out there. And number two, how this is going to enable Palantir's emerging AI capabilities. So in terms of how Foundry is different, we're going to get nerdy for a second, but we'll tie it all back. You've probably heard of a database. It's where you store data for an application. But when you start dealing with big data, the kind of data you only see with large organizations and enterprises, you need to find a way to connect all the random databases from around your company in useful ways, or even incorporate other random data like PDF files and emails. But Palantir wraps all of this existing data infrastructure together and makes it available via an operating layer, basically like a single source of truth that any other app that needs data can just connect to. And that's pretty valuable all on its own. I mean, it takes everything that's disorganized and organizes it in a single place, but what makes Foundry unique is it also builds in the ability for continuous learning. If this is starting to sound a bit like AI, this is actually all stuff Palantir has been doing since at least 2021. But here's an analogy for what Palantir is doing here. Instead of a one-way flow of information from Foundry into some kind of dashboard that data analysts can use, Foundry combines both the nouns of the business, which is like the raw data, as well as the verbs of the business, all the operating procedures, machine learning models, and insights employees are generating, creating a continuous feedback loop as those verbs take action and learn from the nouns. Here's an example to make this hit home. Imagine a restaurant that sells chicken and salads. They usually stock the same amount of both items, and they usually don't run discounts or promotions. So let's say they have some data that shows how much of each item they sell each day, and all that is loaded into Foundry. Now a really smart data analyst comes along and realizes they sell twice as many salads on Friday as they do chicken. So the analyst tells the marketing team, and they make a new discount that chicken is half price on Friday, trying to boost sales. Well, Foundry can now take in that new insight from the analyst, and in the future, if chicken sales drop on, say, a Tuesday, it'll take the same playbook and recommend you offer a discount on those days as well. It learns from the actions you take. Now, Palantir has won a bunch of awards for this tech. It's legit stuff, but it's still not the ChatGPT style generative AI. So now we get into the important part. What happens when you combine the already very good ontology with the emerging field of generative AI? Well, Palantir's CEO Alex Karp has said that the most significant arms race of our time is to construct the next generation of AI. With the number and types of problems that AI can solve growing every day, and a growing recognition that some kind of AI is going to be needed by every business to stay competitive, Palantir responded by launching AIP, their AI platform. And things have taken off. For context, AIP was launched here, and we saw what happened to the stock price after that. So even though people like to make AIP sound complicated and hard to understand, let's break it down so we can at least have an intuition for the value that it provides. That way we and not Wall Street can predict the next rise in Palantir's stock price before it happens. So the way Palantir describes AIP is like a football coach on the field. You can't win a football game by just watching the scoreboard. You need to know what's happening on the field and combine that with an understanding of how the game works. Since any AI that has access to the Foundry ontology can see all the data pieces and how they fit together, that means the AI can sort of speak the language of the game and make recommendations for new strategies. There is so much to talk about with AIP, so I'm going to break it down into the three sections that matter most for investors. Number one, how Palantir's AI is different from most companies. Two, how an ontology supercharges AIP to create the brain of the business. And three, get into Palantir's next horizon in AI, which will be key to this potentially becoming a $100 billion plus company. So starting with how Palantir's AI is different. Look, it's no secret that we're in a bit of an AI hype cycle right now. Peter Thiel, one of the most influential voices in Silicon Valley and the biggest single shareholder in Palantir, has said the current AI market is unstable and has echoes of the dot-com bubble. But Palantir's approach to AI is different. The issue with most so-called AI investments today is the large language models that dominate the news cycle are really good at a few things. ChatGPT running GPT-4o is the most famous example of a large language model, or LLM for short. It can understand text or even images really well. It can reformat that text, extract it, summarize it, or even generate something new. What it's not great at? Math or logical thinking. Things that are pretty important when you're making business decisions guided by AI. This has resulted in many, quote, AI companies that are just making glorified chatbots, and sure, they're useful for some things, but they're not really any better than just using ChatGPT directly. This is why Alex Karp has said that large language models are more like a chemistry experiment today. It's interesting, but even if your reaction is flashy and produces energy, it's not useful until you build the engine that uses that chemistry experiment to do something valuable. This is where Palantir really stands out. In fact, Alex Karp believes that LLMs alone are going to become a commodity. Basically, one will be as good as any other, so the prices of those are going to drop. Instead, the real value of AI will lie in how companies are able to refine the AI through their ontology. This is the single most important technology for Palantir investors to understand. Applying AI in the real world requires real-world understanding, aka a digital twin. So if Palantir's AI advantage can be boiled down to practical refinement and real-world applications, let's take a look at how Palantir's ontology-first approach supercharges their AIP platform. I've heard people refer to Palantir's AI capabilities as the equivalent of GPT-6, which would make it more valuable than something like ChatGPT. And while that might seem like a bit of an exaggeration, there is some truth to it. If we look at how AI has improved over time, GPT-3 was the original ChatGPT, and it was great at text responses. GPT-4o, which is OpenAI's latest model, can handle basic reasoning and even multiple input types. GPT-5, their next version, might be better at mathematics and more advanced reasoning. But combine logical thinking with the ability to learn on the fly, that's where you start to get into capabilities that don't exist at a high enough level to be super useful even in next-gen LLMs. But Palantir already has this, and it's working in the real world. But Palantir doesn't specialize in training custom models according to their own technical architect. So let's break down how Palantir can be so effective with their AI without actually needing those AIs to be smarter on paper. Here's what it looks like if we were to break AIP into layers. At the base, you have the core data of the business, the AIP core. Above that, you have the action graph, a representation of all the business processes and best practices the AI can pull from, which then supports the AIP dashboard to make the recommendations. This lets the AI take real-world actions in a way that feels like science fiction, all in a way that is secure, governable, and that you can understand why the AI made that recommendation. Because AI hallucinations on a battlefield would not be a good thing. What Palantir's AI does is basically follow the lines in a knowledge graph ontology, so the AI can effectively offload much of its reasoning capabilities by grounding itself in the ontology. That grounding is the key to their performance. So let me show you a really basic version of this that you can actually do yourself with just ChatGPT to give you a tangible feeling for what Palantir's grounding is actually doing. On the left, I'll ask ChatGPT to explain Palantir's AIP platform, and on the right, I'll ask the same question but give the LLM access to all the research I've put together for this video. While their answers might be superficially similar, the answer on the right is more detailed and references where it's getting its information from. Now combine that plus the ability for the AI to traverse the knowledge graph and understand the relationship between pieces of data, and you get AI responses that are far more intelligent than anything you'll get from ChatGPT. Comparing Palantir's AIP versus a regular AI is like comparing two equally smart employees, but one who has 15 years of experience with the company and one who just graduated college. But even with that capability, with what we've talked about so far, AIP would just be a chatbot that is very knowledgeable about an organization and knows how it does business, but Palantir takes things one step further with an emerging field of AI that the stock market seems to be completely missing. The latest way companies like Palantir are supercharging their AI capabilities is by shifting from making the AI as smart as possible to instead building a system to support the AI. This emerging technique is called AI agents, and once everyone else catches up, it's the way that every company is going to work in a few years. So here's what every tech investor should know about AI agents. An AI agent lets you tell an AI to accomplish a task, and then it goes out and completes the task, either with your supervision or not. I like to think of an AI agent like a manager of an organization. The agent receives a task from you, the boss, and they have access to a set of tools that they can then use to respond to your request. These tools could be simple programs, or they could even be other specialized AI agents. So the agent then takes your request, figures out which tools it needs to do the job, then just passes on the information each tool needs to run. Then those tools handle all the heavy lifting. It sounds kind of simple, but what's unique here is the focus isn't on making the AI super smart. It's about building flexible, simple tools that the AI can pick from. Because the pace of AI is accelerating so quickly, you can't afford to build one super smart, does everything AI that takes years to train. Instead, you can build a kind of smart AI agent that knows just enough to pick an appropriate set of tools to solve a problem. So maybe I build an AI agent that specializes in booking travel. I tell the AI to book me a plane trip to Australia. Well, the AI can call a scheduler tool, then a flight booking tool, then a hotel booking tool. And maybe after that, it calls a separate AI tool that writes me an email summary of my itinerary. The AI agent doesn't need to know how to do all those things itself. It's just smart enough to pick the right tools in the right order, and the tools handle all the heavy lifting. Now start layering that, where some of the tools can be AI agents themselves, each with its own set of tools that it can use, and you start to get complex, multi-step decision making that mirrors the overall structure of a large organization. It feels like the super intelligent AI from the future, but it's all done using off-the-shelf AI combined with smart design and good data ontology. So Alex Karp tells us exactly how valuable this is. You can turn non-technical people into technical people, because now everyone has the brain of the business accessible to them via the AI interface. And you can do things that would have otherwise cost billions of dollars for millions of dollars. A great ontology plus an AI agent system of tools enables the company to grow continuously as it rides this AI cycle, but with their feet firmly on the ground. If you want to see how this technology is feeding into Palantir's earnings and their overall strategy, watch this video on why you need 100 shares in Palantir today.